Rosie has travelled today from the Australian Data Research Commons. We're very lucky to have you. She has expertise and extensive knowledge of the Australian research infrastructure sector, leadership experience from all around the world, Japan, the UK, and now Oz, unfortunately. And there had to be a joke, even though we're very lucky to have our Australian counterparts this year. Includes every aspect of scientific instrumentation, from product development and technical marketing and to the management of multi-user facilities working in environments that cross academic and industry domains. Allow me in welcoming Rosie.
Tēnā kotu, tēnā kotu, tēnā kotu katawe. When was the last time that you looked at something and you thought, someone should do something about this? Maybe you've even assumed that someone has done something about this. Every year, Australia has 200,000 poisoning incidents reported. You think there'd be a national database? Or how about a platform for modelling bushfire behaviour? You think we'd have one of those? Well, we do now. These are examples of recent projects undertaken by the Australian Research Data Commons. In fact, they're part of a significant portfolio of over 120 different projects that we've been working on. And I suspect that all of you here are doing similar kinds of things. Digital research infrastructure is becoming a fundamental underpinning requirement for our world. In fact, you know how we like to look overseas for validation? Here's one from the US. In fact, they're calling it knowledge infrastructure. Shared scientific data assets and resources, standards, protocols and services. We're talking about data integration, data sharing, data reuse. Could I just ask that all of our discussions that we're having about data storage and retention, could we put a bit more emphasis on reuse? Just saying. Analytics, computer algorithms, platforms, these are all going into forming knowledge infrastructure. And I think that's what drives so many of us as we work to build that infrastructure for researchers. So when it comes to looking at the future of digital research infrastructure, we also have to look at the past. Now, I'll give you the quote that's often attributed to Newton, 1765, in a letter to Robert Hooke. We're building on the shoulders of giants. Now, gossip, 350-year-old gossip, rumour has it that he was actually having a bit of a dig at Hooke's stature. Just saying. Also, the quote didn't originate in 1765, and it goes back to Greek mythology. It goes from bad to worse. This is Orion, who was blinded by a king for raping his daughter and put his servant on his shoulder so he could see. Nevertheless, the idea is there that as we look forward, we're building on the achievements of our peers and our predecessors. So, in Australia, where's Reese? Have we got Reese this morning? Good morning, Reese. Sorry to do this to you. Taking you back to 2006. Reese was running platforms for collaboration around the time of the first NCRIS budgets. That's the National Collaborative Research Infrastructure Strategy. The Australian government put $542 million against research infrastructure back in 2006. Fantastic. In Europe, in 2011, we had the establishment of DARIA. Don't know what my computer's doing to me now, go away. the digital research infrastructure for arts and humanities. We had the establishment of Research Data Alliance. They celebrated a decade last year. Of course, we've got CoData, we've got WDS. What I was looking at when I was trying to prepare this talk is, when was the first eResearch New Zealand? 2010, I got it right, 14 years ago. Fantastic. There is a long history here. And we have seen innovators building research infrastructure. Sendari, I found in my research, the Collaborative European Digital Archive Infrastructure, in 2013, a 4-year project looking at World War I. I'm getting some nods from you, Nick. You know that one? Okay. So really, we are standing on the shoulders of giants as we look forward. So in the present, what's the context that we're dealing with? Well, in Australia, as I mentioned, we've got NCRIS, the National Collaborative Research Infrastructure Strategy. And under this, the ARDC is funded as one of 24 national research infrastructures. So we describe our purpose as providing researchers with competitive advantage through data, but we have other infrastructures looking at marine science, looking at terrestrial ecosystems, biodiversity, astronomy. I describe it as research infrastructures that take us from the oceans to the stars. And this digital research infrastructure strategy is the current context that we're dealing with, that we need to answer. A draft was released just before Christmas. The consultation, I understand, had 80 responses. We were told that most of them were favourable, but the advisory group would take care to look for the diamonds in the rough with the remaining responses. So that's the Australian context. Critically, of course, the global context. A lot of work has been done over recent times by the Global Open Research Commons. They've come together to describe the essential elements of a research commons. And I don't think that anything that you're seeing here is going to be surprising to you. Looking at interoperability and standards, that covers so much of our work. Sustainability, engagement, governance structures, they're all things that we think about on a daily basis. What we do need to think about, though, of course, is how we fit in to that broader international landscape. And I think really for the purposes of this morning, I'm actually talking about ANZ fitting in to that broader European, North American landscape. But we have challenges in building this research infrastructure and making it available. We have some very significant challenges in front of us that are holding us back. The first is the resources to do this work. Historically, ARDC has partnered with other organisations, with the universities, to build infrastructure, often using a competitive open call. Now, I also need to say for the record, I'm very pleased this is being filmed today, we're not a funder, we're not a bank, we're a collaborator. Just going on the record with that. But you know what the problem is with this? Well, there's two. First, it puts researchers in competition with each other to build infrastructure. That's not how we're going to tackle societal challenges. We need researchers to collaborate in the building of research infrastructure and compete on the research. Partner where appropriate. Jan gave us some great examples of that this morning. But compete internationally on our research, collaborate on our research infrastructure. The second challenge here is, even if we decided competing was a good idea, we simply can't meet the demand for research infrastructure. So resources, that's our first problem. The next thing is when we put all of our efforts, our precious resources, our expertise and our skills into building this infrastructure. and we build a project, and at the end of the 3 years, we say, great, project's done, bye-bye, you're on your own. We all know research infrastructure is not self-sustaining. We need enduring research infrastructure. Sure, we need to innovate, we need to pilot, but we can't have everything as a pilot. We need to think about how some of the things we build as research infrastructure move beyond being a project to a product, something that researchers can rely on. And then, of course, we need our own workforce and the researchers to have the knowledge and the skills to use that infrastructure. So what are we going to do about this? If we bring together the resources, the people with the right skills to run enduring infrastructure, to enable researchers to conduct world-class data-intensive research, what's it going to look like? Okay, I do work for the ARDC, okay? Just happens to be a research data commons. What we're looking at here is how we bring together the people, the skills, the storage, the data, the models, the compute to form the basis of this infrastructure. We can't be everything to everyone, but we have to think about how we meet the needs of the greatest number of researchers with those finite resources, how we can make a difference and then build on that impact. So at the ARDC, our strategy is based on the concept of a thematic research data commons to support the maximum number of researchers through a small number of strategic priority areas. A fabric of national research infrastructure strategically supported, not created competitively, created in collaboration, co-designed with the research community. We're looking at how we apply the ARDC's competencies, our support for Nectar, the National Research Cloud, the persistent identifiers, the skills and expertise, how we put these competencies across that research fabric. Now, we have started with 3 thematic research data commons: people, planet, and HAS. We think that by using these 3 strategic pillars, we're going to be reaching about 70%-ish, 75% of the research community right now at the start. There are gaps. People is looking at health and medical data. Planet, yet no surprises, earth and environmental science. HAS, humanities, arts, social sciences, and indigenous data. The eagle-eyed among you might spot we're missing astronomy. We've got very, very strong astronomy community in Australia, both radio and optical. But we're saying, just at the minute, guys, you're probably out in head. We're going to leave you there. Another really big gap that we have is we're not addressing heavy industry. And I think that will come. But in selecting these areas, what did we consider? We considered our government priorities, the footprint of where our national competitive grants are already going. We looked at where the R&D tax incentive is being applied, both of those by field of research code. And critically, we looked at our existing set of stakeholders and partnerships. So that led us to people, planet, and HAS and indigenous. Now, I think we were told yesterday, the way to keep it interesting is don't try and tell you everything. Paraphrasing Voltaire. Don't know if anyone can remember that quote better than me. I am not going to attempt to tell you the long and short of people, planet, and HAS this morning. Don't worry, you will get out by lunchtime. Oh, was there another session before lunch? All right, what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to drill down on the Planet RDC. We had Carol looking at health data yesterday, fantastic presentation. I'm just going to look at Planet. One of the advantages of talking about Planet is I get to show some of my holiday snaps from earlier in the week. My goodness, Monday in Zealandia. Wow, that was impressive. So beautiful. Thank you for having a conference in Wellington. So I mentioned that we weren't working through a competitive open call process, but a collaborative co-design, and of course that has to start with consultations. Who will the Planet RDC support? What does it need to deliver? And why will the proposed outcomes drive transformation in research? So we're seeking to support earth and environmental science research and management. So we need to be spanning across academia, industry and government for cross-sector, multidisciplinary data collaborations at a national scale. And what are we looking to build? Federated models that deliver enduring, interoperable compute and storage infrastructure and services with analysis platforms and tools supported by expertise, standards, best practices, including implementing fair and care principles. It's a big ask. One of my passions when it comes to working out how we move forward, how we work with the research community, is it's not a blank piece of paper. By our very nature of our work, we're great at coming up with diverse, innovative ideas. But if we're trying to build research infrastructure that meets the needs of the greatest number of researchers, I think it's really important that the ARDC puts some careful thinking into what's required and then holds that up to the research community and says, have we got this right? Test it. Really test it rigorously. And that's what we did. We kept post-it note manufacturers in business. Actually, I think it was the Miro board, so maybe we didn't. But we went to the consultations with about 7 different ideas, and they were refined through this process to give us some really clear indication of where we should focus our efforts for building research infrastructure. Right the way through, though, an essential attribute of anything we did needed to be the implementation of the fair and care principles. Continuity of data storage, access, management, and really recognition of the importance of Indigenous knowledge and data. Now, the interesting point here, of course, is this is not the Hassan Indigenous RDC. This is the Planet RDC. But some of these essential attributes, they show why we get benefits from working in a fabric of digital research infrastructure. Best practice developed in one of the pillars can then be transferred and refined to another discipline as required. So, for example, one of the things we need to do now is we really need to get expertise, Indigenous expertise in Indigenous data governance on our team. And of course, they'll be working across all of those pillars. So with that, at the end of the consultations, we had a report released. I think it was about 18 months ago, could be wrong there-ish. We'll take that. Data challenges, what was important to the community? Reliable and trusted data supply chains, curated, integrated and fair data sets and services, and modelling and decision support infrastructure, all supported by the implementation of fair and care. That's what the consultations told us. But as I've mentioned, we're one of 24 research infrastructures, and as well as that, we have government departments, Geosciences Australia, We've got the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation. Hi, guys. All of us need to partner together in this space. And so what we thought was really important was to go and test those findings with the groups, the organisations that are also offering research infrastructure. Now, we do work with them. Already, we work very, very closely. So one example of an ARDC programme was the cross-NCRIS national data assets. This is another one of those examples that when I came into this field, I assumed would already be done. The idea that we would be connecting up the data, our marine data from IMOS, biodiversity from the Atlas of Living Australia, and then from the Terrestrial Ecosystem Research Network, TERN, the data from those three organisations all coming together to feed into our National State of the Environment report. Got it? Makes a lot of sense? One of those things you'd assume had happened? No. So that was one of the things we had to set out to do, and we did do it. But it does show another problem. We did it, it was right for a single instance. What researchers need is data that's as close to real time as possible, and we're still not there on that one. But it does show the depth of the relationship with our colleagues across NCRIS. And building on that, our platforms programme that just came to an end, pretty much to an end in December, 26 different platforms, many of them partnering with NCRIS capabilities in the earth and environmental science space, and our supercomputing facilities are there as well. So two things. One, we have the partnerships. We don't want to lose this work. And the second is these are the groups we have to collaborate with as we move this forward. And so our next round, which was 12 months ago, it was January of last year, we got all of that group together to test the findings from the consultations. There's a key point here. It was easier for us to run competitive open calls and assess them and make some decisions. It was faster. The road to building these collaborations and consensus was a long road. It takes a lot of time, and this is an important thing to think about as a research infrastructure when you're looking at budget cycles. So that was one of our learnings along the way. So we asked our colleagues to join us in Canberra. We tested the findings against those headings, the reliable and trusted data supply chains, curated, integrated and fair data assets and services, and modelling and decision support infrastructure across the geosphere, the hydrosphere, the atmosphere. Now, what I need to say to you about this chart, it looks very nice. We've got a great graphics designer. My brief to him is this data was collected over a 24-hour period, extremely subjective. So the original data is much more detailed. Please, can you do me a chart as if I'm holding this at arm's length with my eyes half closed? So I'm getting, I can see Keith's already practicing that. So we're getting broad indicators, and that's what I want you to take from this. The broad indicators are that the maturity in the data supply chain, so we're talking with many of our colleagues that acquire the data, that's greater, and we go into the amber and even the red, the ad hoc, by the time we're looking at the modelling and decision support infrastructure. So it's that difference that matters. The other point that is really important here is to think about who we were speaking with. We were speaking with the providers of research infrastructure, people working very, very closely together in this space. We weren't speaking with, for example, government departments. And we would expect that you would have a different chart, much more amber, much more red if we were dealing with government departments. And that's something to keep in mind. Anyway, we tested it, we found we were comfortable with it, and we landed on the 4 focus areas for the Planet Research Data Commons. They didn't change too much in that final testing. I think that's another good thing for us to recognise. Another beautiful shot from Zealandia. Okay, so if we put all of these things together, what would that ecosystem look like? If we're building world-leading environmental and climate digital infrastructure, you can see we have the data coming in from the trusted data supply chains with the partners that I've spoken about, with industry, government, research institutions. At the top here, we have what I'm describing, for want of a better word. I think there's been a bit of a theme this week with keynote speakers inventing words. I'm behind, I need to do my homework. We had some good ones from Carol yesterday, as well as Jan's new set this morning. I'm calling these lenses. It's a lens through which a particular research community, whether it's coastal, agricultural, biosecurity, it's a lens through which they access the research infrastructure and, of course, can be expanded with other applications. But then we're looking at how do we have a national reference architecture that is addressing those key focus areas, building on enduring infrastructure and positioning us for a future where there's a solid, dependable digital research infrastructure that researchers can build into their thinking and know that they don't have to reinvent the wheel. So we have Nectar, the National Research Cloud run by us, but also we've got the HPC facilities, we've got commercial cloud, looking at how we move through those focus areas, the curated, integrated and fair data assets and services, where we're going to be looking at the things such as vocabs, persistent identifiers, to providing that data as a service for modelling and decision support infrastructure. What I'm going to do now for the remainder is look at how we see taking this fantastic insight to the requirements of the research community, whether they're in academia, industry or government, and we do something about it. How we turn this into a reality. So I'm going to take you back to a day in June last year. We were over in Perth in Western Australia, a group of happy, smiling people. It's worth me reminding you, Perth is further from Sydney than Wellington. And in that photograph, we have multiple federal government departments represented. We've got many NCRIS capabilities represented. We have our partners in Western Australia, the Marine Science Institute and WOBSI, the Bioscience Institute. We've got their state government. This is really significant because it's showing how much goodwill and commitment to this project is prepared to turn up to Perth in winter, pouring rain, and we're there and we're committed. And now it's scorching hot, so, we love Wellington. So why are we all there? The Pilbara was what took us there, the Pilbara region of Western Australia. It's home both to incredible biodiversity and also critical national resources. It's got many existing mining operations, numerous proposed developments in the pipeline. About 450 million Australian dollars is spent by the proponents of these new developments on collecting environmental data annually. Most of this data is collected by consultants, it's locked away, it's not available for research. But what really matters here is not just the impact of one development, one new mine. It's the cumulative impact. It's the cumulative impact of our work on all of the biodiversity. So we're looking at systems levels. We need a way to bring this information together, and that's what motivated everyone to turn up. That's what motivated everyone to come together to solve the problem of creating trusted data and information supply chains. We structured the conversation around the SAFE framework, a shared analytical framework for the environment. This is an abbreviated version. Culture, legal, governance, policy, and fair and care. Collecting the observations, the protocols, the data, the metadata standards. Curating the data quality, the vocabs, the identifiers. Integrating. This is a long list. It's a long list. We've got a lot to go through here. Conceptual frameworks, standards for data sharing, provenance. Analysis, the standards for modelling, assurance and uncertainty measures. And you need all of that before you can actually get to the use, the decision support tools, the reporting and the research. What we did over the course of a couple of days is we went through each of those layers and we spent some time in breakouts and workshopping where we were and what the gaps were. And I think it's really important, going back to standing on the shoulders of giants, there is excellence throughout our ecosystem, but it's disconnected and we don't have the full pipeline. So this is what we're looking at as the first of our focus areas, a trusted data and information supply chain, addressing that cumulative impact assessment, allowing us to be able to report on trends. We need to be looking at where we have gaps in this process, where we have duplicated effort, where we have inconsistency in quality assurance at the curation stage, where we've got multiple bespoke techniques, lack of transparency in integration and analysis. We need to address the lack of use and reuse of existing evidence in decision making. We were then able to look at what are the building blocks we need to enable these supply chains. The trust between stakeholders, the fair data and software, and the technology, how we bring these different things together with appropriate business models, data governance, practices to make data and software fair. One of the learnings I had from Carol's talk yesterday, we've seen so much effort going into getting us recognising the importance of data. We've all been on that journey. We need to be talking more about the importance of software. Talking about code only yesterday, that was a great discussion. How we have fair data and software supporting this system. So this is one of the first projects kicking off. We are starting in the Pilbara. Hamish Hollower, our Director of Planet, is over in Perth this week. He's having those discussions. We will be looking at, this is not my slide, but it is a particular model that I'm sharing with you. It's the drivers, pressures, and impacts and responses model that we're seeing here. So that's what's being applied in the Pilbara. I've gone into that one in a bit of detail. It's the most advanced. We are looking at two other areas, two other exemplar projects across Australia. One is in Gippsland in Victoria, and the other, I think, is in New South Wales, but it escapes me just for the moment. So that's how we're moving forward in creating the culture around the trusted data and information supply chain. But as well as that, as we move into that reference architecture, as we look at the way that the ARDC will be offering services to support that ecosystem, this is where we need to start looking forward and imagining what researchers are going to be wanting to do. Augmented reality, thinking about how they will be interacting with data in the future. And one of the things that is picked out in the National Digital Research Infrastructure Strategy, and we're thinking about here, is how we address the movement of the challenge. I'm not restricting this to data at this point, but the research environment, how we move from the desktop to Nectar, to commercial cloud environments, and also then to our national high-performance compute facilities. How do we make sure that a researcher is working in the best compute environment to tackle their challenge at that point in the journey? Because the answer to this is it's not just one space. There is a time for researchers to be developing new models and algorithms in the cloud. There is a time for them to do preliminary simulations in the cloud. But then there's also a time for them to move to HPC for the more intensive high-fidelity simulations and output, and then perhaps back to the cloud for further collaboration. We're starting to look at this foundation layer, and I know, of course, we have our Nectar node at the University of Auckland. Hiya, Mark. Working with us on developing this strategy. It's a really exciting time. So that's looking forward. But right at the top of that, I showed you the MADC program, Modelling and Decision Support Infrastructure. And I've also shown you how many platforms we have been working on. It's really important not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. How do we take the best of what we've built to date and ensure that we convert it to a stable, enduring platform? So I'm going to read you a quote here. One of our platforms, EcoCommons, was launched in November of 2022, so it's just over a year old. It's one of those that it's come to we've just built it, and it's come to the end of the project. And then we're worrying about what happens to it next. Here's a quote from the former Chief Scientist of Queensland, Professor Hugh Possingham, at that opening night. I dream of a day when Indigenous people and fishermen and mining companies are sitting around a laptop in Mullumbimby, deciding how to plan land-sea reserves, equitably discussing data and the information and the cultural knowledge that needs to go into these land-sea reserves. And that, he said, I think is what EcoCommons will deliver. That sounds amazing to me. That sounds like we've nailed it in creating this platform. And it absolutely underpins why we have to look after it. And it's one of a number. So we've got some in the Planet RDC, we've got trusted research environments, for example, multiple in people. We've got the Language Data Commons of Australia in the HAS and Indigenous. So the MADC program is supporting these platforms as we transition to a new model. We look at how we support them. EcoCommons is going to dock with our Nectar node in Queensland with QSIF, and we'll work through what's the governance needed to ensure longevity and innovation for that platform. So, approaching the end of our time, I didn't get any numbers waved at me, but I think we're going okay. Oh, okay, right, all right. What I want to talk about here is the opportunities for all of us to work together, how we complement each other, how we collaborate, how we connect with each other. I hope from what I've shown you this morning, it was only one of our 3 thematic research data commons, but what I've shown you is the way that we're thinking about tackling things. Really clear identification of focus areas, the activities and the projects that sit beneath them. Why does that matter? We want to share with you where we're going in a multi-year environment and invite you to work with us on that journey. It allows you to factor this into your plans as well. That's one of the big problems with collaborating, mismatched funding cycles. How do we communicate this to MB well in advance? Lovely to meet you the other day. So that we can plan. So that we can plan for a future together. So, I forgot to do that there, didn't I? That was the last slide. Complement, collaborate, connect. I'm on 2 different systems here. So, people and planet. One of our staff members found this in their local IKEA store yesterday. I could not resist. I haven't had time to send someone in with a little sheet that adds Hass and Indigenous. But it does show how simply we're structuring this. These are the types of research infrastructure we need to get right. We need to get these right to tackle the wicked problems that are facing our researchers. It's an imperative. We can't do this by spreading our resources around like fairy dust, expecting magic to happen. We've got to come together, we've got to be strategic, and we've got to answer the needs of the research community. So in closing, I would like to offer my congratulations to the organisers of eResearch New Zealand this year. It's been a fantastic conference. Thank you so much for having me. I would like to thank everyone that I've had the chance to catch up with this week. I've learned great things. I've met old friends. I've met some new faces, and I really appreciate being here to share our vision with you today. But in return, come back and join us for International Data Week 2025. Thank you.
Thank you. I particularly loved your first question. When will someone do something about this? I think about it every day when I look at something in my kitchen, as I'm sure everyone in this room will. Honestly, your talk was insightful. It was something that the Kiwis over here can also very much relate to, but also just sharing the future of digital research data with your Kiwi counterparts actually means a lot to us. So thank you so much. It was all about collaborate, collaborate, collaborate was the theme the past 3 days, and I had this conversation with Yvette and Mark yesterday. It's all about who you know in this room, and reach out when you have those ideas. I think that you can do anything when you know the right people. So thank you again, and we hope that you join us next year, and hopefully a lot of people will come to your International Data Week as well.